Welcome into the Poetry Tavern, a place to discuss both reading and writing poetry, spotlighting new poems and ideas every week. Hello, and welcome in to another episode of Poetry Tavern. I'm your host Charlotte, as always, and this week we're going to be talking about pleonasm. Now, I was drawn to pleonasm for a couple of reasons, and if there's a reason, So anyway, basically pleonasm is like the use of unnecessary words or words that double up the meaning. But yeah, let me just dig into it and we'll see where we go. So one of the things that I found when I was researching pleonasms was that it is really hard to find examples. And in fact, a lot of sites will say, oh, pleonasms are mistakes. But I read one example and I was like, actually, I really like it and how it's used in this context. So that did not stop my hunt. I very well could have turned around and been like, hey, because this was a thing I found before I even finished recording the last episode. But instead, I decided to persevere. So finding examples of pleonasm wasn't as easy as it's been in previous weeks, but it was something that I managed to do. And I think I found ones that have effects that I think is good. So let's just dive in. So the first poem we're talking about this week is Every Dog's Story by Mary Oliver. I have a bed my very own, it's just my size, and sometimes I like to sleep alone with dreams inside my eyes. But sometimes dreams are dark and wild and creepy, and I wake and am afraid, though I don't know why. I am no longer sleepy, and too slow the hours go by. So I climb on the bed where the light of the moon is shining on your face, and I know it will be morning soon. Everybody needs a safe place. The pleonasm is specifically in the beginning when the voice of the narrator, who we are led to believe is the dog, says "my very own." With the implications of the word "my" and "own" are sort of the same. So saying "my own" is sort of is a pleonasm. I was gonna say it's a pleonasm. I mean it's a really common one, and it's like not like doing any harm in this sentence per se, but I think it does add an extra effect of like the reinforcement of the ownership of this thing for the dog. But it is, even though that is a safe space, like that's a comfort there of an ownership of a thing, and that reassurance that it is the dog's own space. That isn't enough comfort when the nightmares come, and I think that's such an interesting thing of like to reinforce the safety. I mean, maybe not necessarily safety, but the ownership of like that space, and then to have that later be like, but it is not something that like provides comfort in the night when the nightmares come. And I really liked that. I mean, it's such a small detail, but I think it really did something for me. Especially since I was like looking for pleonasms and the way they work in poetry. So, I mean, maybe if I hadn't been looking, it wouldn't have done so much work. But because I noticed it and paid attention to it, I think I really like the added detail. Okay, this one again, it's a very small instance of pleonasm, but I think it does something that's interesting. So I'm going to talk about it, but I'm going to read the whole poem first. It's Front Door by Sexton. In through the translucent panels of the front door stained with roses, here and there their green stems wander sun patterns the cavernous hall. With rose outlines the wood panel box came sharp-cornered the TV. So heavy to look at it, cut into my clavicle was it full of cannonballs, and was it carried on 4 or 6, 8 sets of shoulders into the room, such impossible heaviness for the size of it, and it was full of tinctures, puzzled colours, picture elements of their sweep rates flashing across it when I saw my reflection in the blackness of its face. It was a child's face. Neighbours came over their fences a summer day, but dark with storms, a deluge impassable roads, the forest lurching on the hill. I felt my head turn into stone. No, it wasn't the old TV. We carried her to the window. The meteors that time of year. Perseids, only sparks really the Irish Sea from the sky, in bullets through the afternoon. and King Cooper, navigates his ship through the storm, an engine or thunder rumbles. Electrons pooled under the clouds, the room was heavy with ions. I held my breath in the lightning, the sea fell into the garden. Evening rose like the river, then the flash with all of us in it. And her voice moves around the edge of the world, and now I think I remember what I mean to say, which is only to say that once when all the world and love was young, I saw it beautiful glowing once in the corner of the room, once I was sitting in its lights. This poem is really, like, dense. I think I get lost every time I read it, almost. I think the first time I was like proper lost and I read it and I was like, ah yes, I'm lost in magic. I don't know what's going on, but it's magic. But I think what's really interesting, and go back. The pleonasm in this is the green stems. I mean, roses stems are, while stems aren't always green, the reinforcement of the green stems here is sort of a further pushing of this idea of this front garden being a healthy and beautiful thing. And it's almost interesting then to see that contrast with the beauty described about the TV. And like, it's so interesting that it starts with this natural image and moves inside the house to the TV and the light it emits and the beauty that comes from that. And it's almost as if like the position of nature, which is admired in the beginning, is removed by the introduction of the TV into the home. I mean, not that I'm ever going to complain about the television, because I do love a good show or two, but I think like that's such an interesting thing that you could pick out and maybe make a point for, because there's not much about the garden. So if you wanted to like talk about that contrast in this poem, you would have to like really dig into every single little word choice. And I think using the pleonasm in that way to sort of reinforce the idea of this green, vibrant, like flourishing and beautiful garden is so interesting, and such a like it's just two words put together, but it does a thing. And the English language is great. I mean, all language is great. Language is awesome. Communicating is great. Okay, that brings us to the end of our show. I am changing it up a little bit. I've been doing a lot of, techniques and picking at little things in larger poems that have effects on the meaning of the poem as a whole. And I think I got super deep down in this one of like, yes, this is a 20-line poem, but let's look at these two really specific words and what it does for the whole thing. So I'm pulling it back. I'm pulling it all the way back. We're zooming out, and we're just gonna look at themes. So I'm sitting at my desk, writing my notes for this week's episode. And part of what I do when I write my notes for this week's episode is I decide what I'm doing next week. Because, I have to talk about it. I have to talk about it here. So next week, we are doing a theme, sitting at my desk. And the theme is, again, I was sitting at my desk when I made this decision, is coffee. Just because I think, like, I have not consumed a lot of poems about coffee. In fact, I cannot think of one off the top of my head, but I think it's such a core part of a lot of people's lives. Like, how many movies or like TV shows or pieces of media is about like, oh, let's go and get a coffee, or like, oh, this is the coffee shop the characters meet in. I was like, I think because it feels so ingrained in culture, I think there must be a lot of poetry that I've just not experienced. Maybe not tons, but I'm gonna go try and find it. So yeah, I'll see you guys next week for an episode on coffee.